Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, the channel where we go through the good and bad of everything nerdy to make sure you spend your time on the best of the best. In today's video, I'll be doing a review of the book Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline, so let's get into it. So Ready Player 2 takes place directly after the end of the book Ready Player 1, so I highly recommend if you haven't read that book yet, be sure to check that out because it's great, it's one of my favorites. And you're not going to really understand everything that's going on because a lot of the backstory from that first book ties into this book. So certainly pick that up because there'll be some spoilers in this video about Ready Player 1 as well. So that being said, the book takes place directly after Ready Player 1 ends. Wade Watts discovers a secret technology that James Halliday had created but has hidden from the public eye. And this technology is a more advanced headset that users can use to transfer their entire consciousness into the Oasis. And so the Oasis is the giant virtual world that houses all of virtual reality for the planet. And so this is a pretty big deal, where in the first Ready Player 1 book, people had kind of advanced virtual reality gear that they would put on to be able to have different sensations. But this is actually full brain immersion into the simulation. So people are feeling everything from emotions to sensations to really anything imaginable that the brain can sense. So it feels like you're there in person versus just wearing VR gear inside the Oasis. And so Halliday really gives the choice to Wade and the other winners of the contest to decide if they want to release this to the world or to keep it a secret and destroy it. And so they actually decide to release it to the world, and this creates a host of other problems where there was already an addiction to the Oasis for a lot of people. This kind of stepped things up to the next level. And so it's kind of like an over-the-top crazed social media addicted world where people are now uploading their experiences from the real world into the Oasis, and people can live out these experiences as if they were actually there. And so on top of this discovery of this new technology, Wade also unearths a new contest set by Halliday, which is trying to find 7 hidden shards across the entire Oasis. And so on top of this, a new villain appears that is actually holding thousands of people hostage and is requiring Wade and his friends to solve this new Easter egg hunt throughout the Oasis. And if they don't do it fast enough, he's going to actually kill off all of these people that he's holding hostage within the Oasis. So it creates some intensity to solve this contest and basically follows a quest that one of the original founders of the Oasis created based on one of her favorite D&D campaigns. And so like the first book where people are diving into different Easter eggs and pop culture references of Halliday's favorites from the 80s and early 90s, this one follows Kira's favorite different things as she grew up during the 80s and 90s. And so I think that's a big difference within this book, is that some of the references that they dive into are maybe from a teenage girl's perspective of what they thought were really popular at the time, compared to maybe some of the more nerdy references that were in the original Ready Player 1 book. Granted, Kira was still a nerd, so there are still different references to various pop culture things and gaming references and book references like that that are nerdy, as she was a big fan of different things like that. But some of the references maybe weren't necessarily as popular as in the Ready Player 1 book. Another thing that I felt that was a little bit weird about this book is that they went into some things related to social issues, sexuality, and even kind of virtual porn to a sense. And so I thought that was a little weird and out of place in the book. I think the overall message for it was good though, in the sense that they kind of talked about how as people experienced being different genders and these various other sexual preferences, that once they experienced that, they became more understanding and could relate to people with different preferences better. And so that kind of got rid of a lot of the hate that was going on. And so I think that that was a good message with that. But for me, it just felt really out of place where I was reading a Ready Player 1 sequel in hopes of diving more into nerd references and gaming experiences and kind of a virtual reality setting, but instead it dove into a lot of social issues, and I felt like it was just kind of forced in there because that's what's relevant or going on in today's age in the real world. And so I kind of gave it the benefit of the doubt where I felt like maybe throughout the story it would tie in more later on, or because of these experiences that might lead to some discovery in this new Easter egg hunt in the book, but it really didn't. And so I just kind of felt like they put it in there just to try and be topical versus actually pertaining to the story. And so to me, that just felt out of place. On top of that, like I mentioned, a lot of the references that they dove into were from Kira's perspective and her favorite movies and pop culture and nerdy things in the book. And for me, I didn't really watch some of the movies they referenced. I wasn't into some of the pop culture references that they were talking about, where in Ready Player One, there were so many that I related to and could appreciate, where this book, that wasn't really the case. And so they dove into a bunch of movies like 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink. And so I had heard of those movies, but I definitely wasn't a raving fan by any means. And some of them I haven't even seen. So I understood what they were doing because they went into similar worlds and movies like that in the first book, but I just couldn't really appreciate any of it. So it was written well, and I think maybe if you like those movies and references, it'd be more entertaining, but it just kind of went on and on for several chapters in these pop culture references that I didn't really care about at all and weren't interesting to me. The book also went into a big section on Prince and a planet for him. And I'm even from Minnesota, and so I got some of the references that they were talking about location-wise, and that was cool. And while I think he has great music, I'm not like a diehard fan by any means. So again, several chapters of this just were not that interesting to me, and I kind of had to force my way through it. And they even had like a battle scene with Prince, but it felt a lot like Scott Pilgrim versus the World in that battle, which isn't a bad thing, but I kind of felt like it had already been done. Another thing I didn't necessarily enjoy about the book is that in the first Ready Player One, they're trying to get past these different challenges, find these Easter eggs, and it felt like a discovery process where the characters had to use this super obscure knowledge that they had developed by playing all these different games, by researching all these different nerdy subjects and different things like that. And so it was kind of like a trial and error process where they were trying to figure out the codes and the passwords, and because of certain obscure references that they had learned about, they were able to get that much closer to solving the puzzles and getting past the areas. And so it's kind of more of a process, where in this book, I felt like everybody already knew the solution to the puzzles that were given to them. Where instead of being like, okay, I think this means this, let's go to this planet, let's try this solution, oh, that didn't work, let's try this instead, oh, maybe it's this thing. Where in this book, it was like, oh, I get that reference, let's go to this planet, we do this, 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 and this, and now we solved it. So there wasn't really any challenge per se with it, and so I didn't really like that aspect where it kind of felt like they were just going through the motions versus unlocking this big discovery and finding this secret, finding this crazy hidden Easter egg based on this obscure thing, or some great gaming ability that they've developed by playing for hours and hours. It was just like, oh, we know the solution, here's how you figure it out, here's the hidden Easter egg at this point. So I didn't necessarily like that aspect. Now, some of the planets and some of the clues and secrets that they tried to unlock and found did have that same process, and I did get that same feeling, but there were several where it was just kind of given to them and they already understood and they just walked right through it. And so I didn't necessarily like that aspect of it. One thing I did really like though is I think the ending was kind of a cool twist. I'm not going to explain what that is, but I really liked the last few chapters of the book a lot. And it was not really what I was expecting to happen, so that was cool. And kind of took the book in a direction I didn't see it going. So I like that aspect a lot. But overall, I did enjoy this book a lot, just not as much as I did as Ready Player One. That was such a great page turner. I was into all the references that they talked about. And in this one, some of the sexual stuff and social issues that they tried to tackle in this book to me just felt out of place and didn't seem to overall fit with the story arc of what was going on in the book. And to me, I wish they would have just spent more time on some of the nerdy pop culture gaming references compared to trying to tackle various social issues within the book. And again, for me, I didn't necessarily relate to all of the references that they were talking about, so it wasn't as an exciting read compared to Ready Player One. But I still think they did a good job of it, and I think if you can appreciate those references and you were into those movies or had watched them in the past or enjoyed some of the references that they went into, you'll probably like this book a little bit more than I did. But for me, I like Ready Player One better than Ready Player Two, but it's still a good book and I think it's worth picking up. But let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this book, how you think it compares to Ready Player One, If you got a lot of the references in the book and could appreciate them, let me know in the comments below. And if you guys like this video, be sure to smash that like button as it really helps out the channel. If you'd like to pick up a copy of the book, there'll be a link in the description below as well. But also, if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out. And if you'd like to help us support the channel, pick out content and more, become a patron of ours at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Patreon. And if you'd like to plug into our live streams and Let's Plays we do on the channel, you can follow us on Twitch at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Twitch. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.